From the WATE.com Digital Center, answering your legal questions, this is Ask Isaacs. Now, here's Lori Tucker and attorney Greg Isaacs.
And hello, everyone. Bo Williams in for Lori this week, joined as always by Greg Isaacs. Great to see you.
Bo, it's good to be here.
We're going to talk some sports today. This is a topic that I think we've all seen coming. This is when was it going to happen? We're talking about the University of Georgia and Damon Wilson. Wilson played at Georgia and then left after signing a deal with the collective there, an NIL deal, and then he transferred over to Missouri. And now, obviously, UGA, there's been a lawsuit. Wilson has countered that lawsuit. There's a lot of back and forth, but a lot of people are watching this one to see exactly what does this mean moving forward, because we've seen already player movement, obviously, with the portals and the NIL deals, but this is something we haven't seen quite yet.
Well, this is fascinating, and you know, UT has been at the forefront of the wild, wild west called NIL from the very beginning,
right,
when the University of Tennessee sued the NCAA
right,
regarding their enforcement of NIL, alleging that it was an unlawful infringement on the Sherman Antitrust Act and created an unfair competitive advantage. UT was successful. After that, the landscape of college athletics changed and changed dramatically, and we're still debating whether it changed for the better or the worse.
Yeah, that's a whole debate for a whole nother show, right? Exactly. But we should know, UGA is saying that Damon Wilson owes them about $390,000. So, they're saying they need this money back. You signed this deal, we gave you X amount of money, and then you bolted for Missouri. On the flip side, he's saying, hang on a second, I didn't have the correct representation when this was done. There's a lot of the questions he's brought to the board.
And here's what's really fascinating. So after the University of Tennessee lawsuit, there was a huge lawsuit and settlement, the House settlement, House versus the University of Arizona. And in there, NIL changed forever. And based on the House settlement, universities could now pay players directly. So you have pay for play. And part of the problem everybody was wrestling with, you could play, the NCAA said the rules were you can pay someone for their name, image, likeness, but not to come to a particular university and play. And we all knew that was just a bunch of legal hoblash.
Yeah. Mumbo jumbo,
blah, blah,
right?
Blah. Yeah, mumbo jumbo. Because they were paying people to go to schools to play. If you're a freshman and you've never done a down, you don't have name, image, likeness, unless you're Peyton Manning's cousin named Arch. So that was really fascinating how the House settlement changed things. And so basically, here was the framework. Universities could pay players directly. Collectives, which was being used to funnel the money to players, now would handle the name, image, likeness. And so you saw some regulation. But we knew this wasn't going to really work because the portals were broken. Recently, we fixed the spring transfer portal where it was eliminated. So everybody was waiting for the first big legal battle. And it happened down the road in the SEC, University of Georgia. Georgia sued Damon Wilson for breaching his NIL agreement.
He owes them $390,000,
much like their football team, and he punched back.
Yeah.
He countersued Georgia. So this lawsuit, everyone in the nation is going to be watching, and this is going to once again define the rules of NIL.
Yeah, we saw something similar kind of at Florida where we had a player, but he mentioned certain people. It wasn't the university or the athletic department. This is UGA against Wilson.
And it's really fascinating. Now, the Florida with Rashada, he sued Coach Billy Napier and some of the heads of their collective, but didn't sue the University of Florida. Here, the University of Georgia drew first blood. They said, Wilson, you have breached your agreement. We want, pursuant to this agreement, which is in dispute, the liquidated damages in the amount of $360,000. Now, in the interim, Georgia's spokesperson was making public statements about Wilson's breach of his agreement. Behind the scene, they were back channeling, saying that he was going to owe the university an amount that's not supported by the agreement, $1.2 million. So interesting. So
Yeah, because Wilson's coming out saying, wait a minute, first of all, confidentiality here. You're taking things public, but you're also trying to disgrace my name,
you're
right?
breaching the agreement. So here's the counterpunch. The University of Georgia files to require arbitration, which was provided for the agreement, but Wilson sues for a number of things. He said there was never a full and final agreement, that the language that he signed on a, quote, term sheet said that there was going to be a license and option agreement. He said that Georgia was heavy-handed while they're preparing for the college football playoffs. They bring him in a room and say, basically, Mr. Wilson, just sign right here and we'll get back with you.
Right.
So he said he was coerced into signing the agreement. He also said that Georgia broke the confidentiality clause of the agreement and that liquidated damages aren't supported. Liquidated damages, typically legal, in a legal universe perspective, are designed not to make somebody whole. They're not compensatory damages. They're designed to punish. So they're typically disfavored by courts. But he also said that Georgia did this as part of an overall conspiracy. They tried to interfere with other universities,
Right.
Allowing him to play Missouri. He also said that he was defamed by telling universities that he was dishonest and breached the agreement. So really interesting. You know, he goes to Missouri and was their leading tackler with 9 tackles. And now, you know, the biggest battle's not on the playing field. It's going to be in a courtroom in Athens.
How long do you think something like this is going to play out?
Oh, it could take forever. And let's just talk about Georgia's first move,
Right.
which is precedent-setting when a university sues a player,
Sure.
a college athlete,
Right.
not a professional athlete. That's up for debate.
Okay. I was going to say, there's a fine line there. I think a lot of people are kind of going, well, how do we refer to these guys
A
now?
fine line. So they sue, then they ask for the arbitration clause to be enforced. Now, here's a really brilliant tactical thing.
Okay.
So do you want, if you're Wilson who countersued, a jury in Athens? Or does the University of Georgia, obviously they didn't want a jury in Athens because they filed for arbitration. You know, is John Q. Public going to look favorably on a university suing a college athlete? Or are they going to say, hey, you hit the road, left in the middle of the night and went to Missouri? So you know, there's a lot of interesting dynamics at play here.
And like you said, John Q. Public, but also how do future recruits look at this as well?
That's
Right?
exactly
I mean, there's
right.
two different parties out there. They're going to be watching this closely.
Well, when you put it under the Hubble telescope of NIL, what this shows is, even after the House settlement, after the University of Tennessee versus NCAA settlement, NIL is still broken. And what you're seeing is, you know, college athletes in Power 5 schools typically have dietitians. They have trainers. They have strength coaches. Well, you know what really is highlighting this lawsuit? They need lawyers. So imagine this. Here's your coach. Here's your mentor. Here's your this. And you're in a room banging out NIL deals. So where's the agent?
Right. And again, it goes back to your fine line of college athlete, professional athlete.
27 shades of gray, Bo, between black and white. And this lawsuit and counter lawsuit, punch, counter punch, really kind of tears at the core of, are college athletes, or because they're being paid, are they professional athletes?
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting how this and other lawsuits play out, but this is the first of its kind.
But like you said, this may take a while to play out. There's a lot of universities watching this. I was reading the other day, there's a quarterback from a major university that recently signed a deal, but has now thrown his name into the portal. So you know that university, maybe even that player, going to be watching to see how does this play out. I mean, this is going to have a ripple effect on how this is, plays out in the courtroom. This battle between UGA and Wilson. So it says it takes time, but there's a lot of people saying, hey, we need to figure this out pretty quick.
Well, we predicted that once it came to the House settlement, that you were going to see a wave of litigation. But now I think the next wave or trend in NIL litigation is, do you see universities sue universities? Do you see collectives sue collectives? Because if you have somebody under contract and you tamper, you do this, have you induced them to breach an agreement? So, at some point, Congress, the NCAA, or someone is going to have to get control of NIL. But this lawsuit, counter lawsuit, punch, counterpunch really highlights some fascinating dichotomies in the current state of NIL.
All right, I tell you, we're going to take a quick break for a moment. We got more to talk about. Keep it tuned right here. We'll talk more with Greg Isaacs in just a second.
I can't.
And welcome back. Bo Williams along with Greg Isaacs. We've been talking about NIL, talking about the current lawsuit between UGA and Damon Wilson at Missouri. We'll talk more about him in a moment. We do want to shift for a second and talk about NIL and the state of Tennessee. Each state kind of approaches this differently. So how does it work here in the volunteer state?
That's very interesting because, the NCAA huffs and puffs and tries to threaten sanctions. And then you see players leapfrogging. For example, Damon Wilson's a good microcosm from Georgia to Missouri.
Right.
So you have different state laws that are going to apply. But for example, Tennessee is on the forefront of NIL legislation. And shortly after they were successful in federal court, there was a bill passed, signed by Governor Lee.
Right.
And it is probably the most NIL player-friendly piece of litigation in the nation. And what it does, it basically insulates Tennessee universities from the NCAA. It says that you cannot be subject to sanctions for lack of enforcement or enforcement by the NCAA regarding NIL. You do not have to comply with a rule or regulation that you feel is unlawful or violates federal law, such as creating an unfair competitive advantage, i.e. Sherman Antitrust Act.
Right.
It, contrary to the House settlement, does not limit the amount of money that can be paid to a particular athlete. It also kind of breaks down the facade that the university's over here and the collectives are over there. It allows coaches to go to meetings with collectives, donors. It allows them to commingle their efforts. So, when a player is jumping from one school, one state to another, they really need to get some advice on what the ramifications would be, because you're going from one state that may have an income tax to another state that may not have an income tax.
And I was going to ask you about that, like taxing on athletes, some of the impact on the athlete themselves. I mean, we've been talking about, how the university is protected and different guidelines for them, but the athlete as well. You mentioned, increased earnings, obviously taxes as well.
So that's going to be something that's going to really play out as athletes go to different places. And in pro sports, it's been that way long time, because players that would get injured in different cities, different teams would have different workers' comp laws, different levels of payment.
Well, a lot of people don't realize that too. You talk about a professional athlete, or I don't care if you're working for a camera crew for a major network that's going around covering these games. If you have a game in Buffalo, well, you're going to pay New York taxes. Next week you're in Chicago, you're paying Illinois taxes. So
it's like wrestling. Wrestlers typically with WWE, WWF are contract, not employees. They're contract athletes, so they pay taxes wherever they wrestle.
Yeah.
If they, in theory, they are supposed to pay taxes wherever they perform or whatever. But a good example. But Bo, what this does is we're trying to define, in the 27 shades of gray between a college athlete, a young person trying to get their degree, and a professional athlete. Where do you draw that line? And so now when you have these significant contracts, big money, on the table, and big impact for universities and their teams, and they're making decisions. When they sign that agreement and they say, you're our quarterback, I mean, they're planning on going into next year as that athlete being their quarterback. But what we're missing when you juxtapose NIL and the pros, typically if a NFL player is going to be making these decisions, he has an agent.
Right.
He has a lawyer.
Right.
He has an accountant. All these people advise him on how to do it. When you have the university call you upstairs after practice and say, sign on the dotted line, they would say, have your people call my people, and let's chat. So I think what you're going to see is, and think about it, how do you deal with an 18-year-old in good faith when you have universities armed with a whole team of not athletes, of lawyers in their general counsel's office? You know, so it's almost the dichotomy is astounding. If a student goes before a university disciplinary board, they are entitled to have representation. If you're negotiating an NIL deal, you're not. So if you get caught drinking on campus, you can have a representative, you can have a student attorney, whatever. When you're getting ready to make a multi-million-dollar decision that's going to impact the rest of your life, you have no one.
And I know for a lot of Tennessee fans out there, obviously when you start thinking about this and talking about this, you think about, well, we had the Nico situation, obviously, where he left for UCLA, wanted more money. You know, coaching staff said, well, adios. But that was a different situation. But again, it almost just kind of was the tip of what was to come for players moving, and when you're talking big money. You know,
it is. And, you know, the whole thing about being a coach and an athlete being an athlete is you have the yes sir, no sir. If you don't listen to me, you're staying after practice and you're running the stadium stairs. I mean, now it's almost as if, hey, you're going to sue me, I'm going to sue you. You talk to my lawyer. It's almost gotten absurd, and this bubbling, this just kind of undercurrent of frustration that was getting ready to percolate up. I think it's kind of like a volcano getting ready to explode, and I think that the lawsuit of Georgia versus Wilson versus Georgia highlights the problem in NIL today.
And there could be a new wrinkle in all of this. So we're going to talk about that when we come back. Yeah, we'll take one more break and we'll be right back. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. Bo Williams, along with Greg Isaacs. Greg, we want to go back to the Damon Wilson UGA situation, and we'll throw Missouri in there as well, because there's several reports, New York Times, other organizations now reporting that Wilson is re-entering the portal. Now, he's still in this situation with UGA, these countersuits and, you know, these lawsuits. He went to Missouri and played for a season, and now it looks like he's entering the portal again. Does that have any impact on what's happening with UGA? What can Missouri do? I mean, again, it's just another. You know, if it's an onion, it's another layer to this onion.
It's
that
another
we're trying to figure
layer,
out here.
and it points out another significant problem or defect in the current state of NIL. So, you know, there was complaints, and UT was at the forefront when Nico left after spring practice, that the timing of two portals was not what it should be. So they did away with the spring portal, limited it to one portal, kind of tweaked the time to kind of track the college football playoffs, the bowl series, and all that. But here's another problem. And Wilson, he's become the new Nico. He's at the forefront of all the current legal challenges and academic, athletic challenges with NIL. Should a player be allowed to jump schools, leapfrog, year after year after year after year, or should there be some penalty that which used to be if you transferred, you'd have to sit out, you'd have to do this? And I think Wilson Wilson highlights one of those remaining fundamental problems, and that is, can a player leapfrog his way through a collegiate career. And it also kind of deprecates the concept of a college athlete.
Yeah.
What you have is a professional NIL hustler that can go here, there, and whatever. And, you know, the coaches have not been good role models. I mean, look at Lane Kiffin, so to speak. So, you know, you have, you know, basically everybody listens to the highest bidder. Loyalty's kind of out the window. You know, it's interesting as a donor and alum, you know, at the end of every season, you don't really expect to see anyone return.
No.
So you have to go out and buy. You know, I was sitting courtside at the game last night. And we were joking about we need to go buy a quarterback. I mean, it's kind of like in Trading Places. You're the Thurston brothers, and you just, you know, go, let's get together and let's go buy an athlete.
Right.
It's really just gotten, Bo, absurd. And Wilson is doing an excellent job of grabbing donor money as he goes from school to school to school.
And maybe they're trying to do this before they know there's going to be new laws and
Here's the
parameters.
question. Would you take a risk on Wilson knowing that he's litigious, knowing that he's got some legal baggage?
And that raises a whole other question, too. I do want to bring up here real quick. We've got somebody writing in here. First of all, what should a top high school player be looking at right now? We've talked about, others out there, college athletes, but what if you're a high school athlete and you're very well regarded and you know you've got college potential, but you're sitting back watching all this play out?
That's a great question.
It is a great question.
And I've been in rooms with that issue and discussions. If I had a son that was a 5-star, I would have a very frank discussion with the coaching staff, because here's the dynamic. One of the unanticipated fallouts of NIL and the transfer portal is the 5-star athlete. The coaches come to your house, they woo, they wine, they dine. They can't wine, you're not old enough to drink. But, they tell you how important you are,
right?
And we want you to be part of our team. Well, then you go somewhere, and the school and the collectives decide just to get the top quarterback every year that's available, and you wind up sitting on the bench, and you never get to develop. So your value becomes diminished because you're a 5-star that has had limited playing time. So if I were a high school player, I would think twice before I go somewhere and there was the possibility that I'm going to have to ride the plank based on some JUCO that had a great year because of the almighty dollar.
Right.
So I think what you're going to have to see, and Mary, thank you for your question. We always like viewer questions. Is some good old-fashioned loyalty in college athletics. And it's going to have to come back or it makes no sense.
Yeah.
And, if you're that 5-star, maybe your agreement is if I don't play so many downs, if I don't play so many games, then I'm entitled to walk, whatever.
Let me throw this out there. I know we got about a minute and a half to go here, and this is going to be way out there. Just overseas in soccer, a team can loan a player to another team, or to a lower division team. So what if you had a 5-star and he's going to be sitting behind, like I said, a JUCO? But say, hey, UT Chattanooga needs a quarterback next season. You're going to go down and get some playing time. When this guy leaves, could that? I mean, I'm just throwing something out there, or ETSU
it's a great
or
scenario,
whoever.
but you know what you've forgotten? You've forgotten the basic of college athletes, and that's going to college.
Well, I don't think I forgot. I think everybody has kind of forgotten about that.
So
to a
what
degree.
about
A lot of people
graduating?
have.
What about getting your degree?
Getting your degree, and that's the other question: are they student athletes, or are they just athletes? Or some of these kids just athletes? Are they student? Are they getting a degree? Or are
A
they
great study would
fast
be
tracking to the NFL? Or
once an athlete that's going to the NFL reaches his senior year. And this is what they don't want to tell you. This is just between me and you, Bo. I don't want to say this publicly.
Right, you got 24 seconds.
How many classes did you attend, you being the athlete?
Oh.
And it would shock your conscience as once they've established themselves, season's over, whether they set foot in the classroom again.
Another topic. All right. Greg, as always, we appreciate it. We're out of time.
It's my pleasure.
Again, thank you for the question. And again, we look forward to doing this again next week when Greg comes in and joins us with another topic.